I'd like to introduce our next session. Do we have a title for this?
I think it just states it. Nope. There we go.
Well, there it is. It's the 9/11, 3/11, 7/7 connection. And we'll welcome back our two presenters, Annie Machon from UK, who's already given a couple of presentations this week and was our keynote speaker just a little while ago. And then Ian Crane, who's heavily involved in the UK 9/11 Truth Movement. And he's going to give us the PowerPoint presentation. But let's have the beginning of the session with Annie Machon. Please welcome Annie Machon.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's a pleasure to be back on a stage. I'm getting quite used to this now. It's great fun. I'm not going to take up too much of your time this afternoon because I know Ian's got a lot of detail around all three of those attacks, which show a lot of mirror imaging going on between them. I really just want to reiterate a few things that I said last night. Start off by making the point that we are always tarred with the brush of being conspiracy theorists. Now, I'm sorry, I've worked on the inside. I've seen a number of these things going on. This is not a theory, this is fact. And the sooner that more people wake up to this, the better, because we can start affecting some serious change. The things I just want to run over very briefly in terms of what we saw. I want to re-mention the Gaddafi plot. Now, this is the reason, as I said last night, that David and I went public, why we blew the whistle on MI5 and MI6. It's also, I think, why they've gone after us, or certainly after David, quite so stringently, because he just knew too much about something that was too dangerous to be put out in public. For those of you who weren't there last night, this is a case of state-sponsored terrorism. It's a case of a Western intelligence agency, which was MI6, the James Bonds of the world, going ahead and funding our terrorist enemies, Islamic extremist terrorists in Libya, in an attempt to try and assassinate a foreign head of state. And the story runs that in 1995, a Libyan military intelligence officer walked into the Tunis embassy and asked to see the MI6 officer based there. He said that he had a ragtag group of Islamic extremist terrorists, some of whom had known links to bin Laden, who were planning to try and assassinate Colonel Gaddafi and take power in Libya. He wanted funding from MI6 in order to carry out this attack. They needed money for the very basics of the coup, the explosives, the guns, the jeeps, the tents even. And MI6 went ahead and did this. They gave them in the region about $120,000 to go and try and assassinate Colonel Gaddafi. Now, this was an incredibly reckless thing to do in a very volatile section of the world. It also doesn't make sense because Gaddafi, by this point, had renounced his support of terrorism. On the other hand, of course, Qaida, as it's become known, was the new big threat as far as Western intelligence agencies were concerned. Anyway, the attack went ahead in early 1996. A bomb or grenade was put under the wrong car, part of a cavalcade that Colonel Gaddafi was driving in, and he obviously survived, but innocent people died. Not only the ones travelling in the car with the bomb, but also in the ensuing security shootout. So innocent bystanders standing there waving their Libyan flags as Gaddafi went past died in the shootout. So these are innocent people. These are someone's families, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters. These are not collateral damage, which is what these people in the intelligence services would have us believe. The operation was also illegal under British law because MI6 didn't get permission of the Foreign Secretary, its political master. Without that permission, they are as guilty as you and I would be if we conspired to carry out murder abroad. So for a whole range of different reasons, we were disgusted with this attack. We went ahead and left MI5 and we went public with this. The initial response of the government when David brought this information to their attention through a legal channel was to have David thrown in prison in Paris with a view to extradition. And also, of course, to, at all costs, avoid a public inquiry into this allegation. And they managed to do that by wheeling out the then Foreign Secretary, a man called Robin Cook, who's now dead, to appear on a high-profile political show in the UK called Breakfast with Frost on a Sunday morning. This was the day after, well, this was the week after the story appeared in the national press. Cook had had no time to conduct a proper inquiry, but he went on the show and categorically denied anything that MI6 had anything to do with it. He said that there was absolutely no basis in fact to Shayla's allegations, and that it was pure fantasy. Now, subsequently, other information has come out into the public realm that proves what Dave said is true. There was a leaked document from MI6 that came out in the year 2000 showing precisely the attack, precisely the plot that David had talked about. Also, information has come out via the French intelligence services pointing to the fact that there was a man called Abdullah Radwan, who was the Libyan military intelligence officer who went ahead and carried out this attack. He's subsequently been killed. So this is manifestly not pure fantasy. But to this day, the Foreign Office will say it still is. And they expect to be able to get away with it. And of course, with the current form of government in the UK, they can. There's still no public inquiry. And now running through that very rapidly, and also there are a number of other cases of state-sponsored false flag terrorism that we saw, both in Northern Ireland, where Mi5 employed agents to penetrate the IRA, and then allowed them to run amok, even to the extent of killing other Mi5 and army agents to maintain their cover. It was completely immoral. There was also the case of Mossad bombing its own embassy in London in order to shatter a Palestinian support network in London and to gain greater security around their embassy. So I'm just raising some of these issues, really to highlight the fact that these are not isolated instances. Of course the intelligence services and rogue elements of the government will cover up for them. Of course the intelligence services play dirty. But we expect them not, if they're going to do that, to a certain extent, at least to do their job properly and protect us. And certainly in the UK, we are not offered adequate protection by MI5 and MI6, as we saw with 7/7. They play fast and loose with our lives. We're just, collateral damage if we get caught up in a terrorist activity in our own countries. So this is part of a pattern. It's part of a power play on their part, and it's part of jobs for the boys. They want to ensure that there is always a state of perpetual warfare. This is the Orwellian nightmare. They want to ensure that there is always an enemy to fight so that they can get resources, so that they can have jobs for the boys and keep the arms industry in business. And that's the real plan behind all these things. So with that background in mind, I'd like to pass over to Ian, who's going to say a few words about the similarities behind the modus operandi of all these attacks. Thank you very much. Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for that, Keith. I've got about 10 minutes just to say a few words, really, about the campaign and why it's still so relevant and how it's going. Just to explain my background, I used to work in Mi5, and along with David Shaler, we blew the whistle on a false flag terrorist attack in Libya in 1996. That was an attempt to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi. The attempt was carried out by so-called Islamic extremist terrorists in Libya. The attack went wrong, and it was also illegal under British law. Now, the attack was funded by MI6, and this is why David and I left MI5, and this is why we went public about our concerns about the crimes of MI5 and MI6. So I just want to say that as a sort of a contextual background, because what we're really discussing tonight is the possibility of a false flag terrorist attack on 9/11. Certainly, what is clearly established now in terms of a growing body of evidence is that the official version of what happened on 9/11 just does not add up. And we can tell that from eyewitness testimony, we can tell that from whistleblower testimony, and we can see that from scientific evidence. How far you go from that point is really your personal journey, what you can discover and do your own research. But I can say categorically that there is a very good chance that this was an inside job, carried out by rogue elements of the American administration. And the only thing that makes that possibility unique is the sheer scale and horror of that day. Because false flag terrorism is a standard weapon in the arsenals of governments and spies. Britain used it in the Libyan plot. Mossad certainly uses it on a number of occasions, one of which, again, David Shaler blew the whistle on, which was the bombing of the Israeli embassy back in 1994 in London. There was another bombing against a Jewish interest section in Buenos Aires that year as well, which has now been established, which has been carried out by Mossad by a judicial inquiry in Argentina. And also the case of tragic Alexander Litvinenko. Now, it's interesting in the British press before Christmas, they always described him as a Russian dissident. He was, but he was also a Russian whistleblower. And again, what he blew the whistle on was state-sponsored false flag terrorism. In this case, some apartment blocks were bombed in Moscow in 1999. And that was blamed on the Chechens, and that was used as a pretext for the atrocious war in Chechnya, which has seen whole-scale abuses of human rights. Now, it turns out, of course, that that was carried out by the modern, fluffier, rebranded version of the KGB, which is now called the FSB. That is what Litvinenko blew the whistle on, and that might well be the reason why he pays the ultimate price. So, this is something that does go on. As I said, it's a standard weapon in the arsenal of spies and governments. And once you accept that, you have to look at any major terrorist atrocity and look at the evidence to see where it leads you. And that really is the premise of tonight's talk. And also to look at how an atrocity like that can be used. I mean, the way that 9/11 has been used is just appalling. It's taken us into illegal and unjustifiable wars in the Middle East. It's resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent people in Iraq alone. And it's also the pretext for a whole-scale erosion of our traditional freedoms and our civil liberties in this country and in the States, you hear from William. They're bringing in sweeping, draconian anti-terrorism legislation, which can be used against any of us. They are bringing in all sorts of acts of parliament that can just, at a sweep of a ministerial pen, quarantine us, stop us associating like this to talk about political ideas. They can even sequester our homes and demolish them under the Civil Contingency Act without any financial reparation due to the owner of that home. Have a look at it on the internet, it's frightening. And of course, the other horrors that are now going on in the UK in the name of the war on terror protecting us. Things like the fact that rendition flights, torture flights, are landing and refueling in our airports. Things like the fact they are putting innocent people in prison without trial for indefinite periods of time. Things like wanting to bring in an ID card and probably take it on to turning that into a microchip whereby they control us. This is frightening. We are sliding almost blindly into a totalitarian state, and we need to do something about this. And this is why the 9/11 truth movement is growing exponentially around the globe at the moment. People can see how 9/11 is being used. People can see where we're going because of 9/11. And it's not that it's the be-all and end-all, the 9/11 Truth Campaign. But the point is, we all know these abuses go on behind the scenes. But because 9/11 itself is so easy to expose as lies and as fabrication, that is why we can knock it out. It's like a keystone in the edifice of lies given to us by our Western governments. So if we can all make ourselves aware, do the research ourselves, don't believe what I'm saying tonight, but do your own research. There's a whole wealth of information out there. Make yourself aware, make your friends and family aware, your wider community, your MP. And let's just say this is enough, it's just enough. You've got to draw a line in the sand. We are not going to be gulled into further illegal wars or a possible strike against Iran. And I find it interesting as well today. I've just got two little pieces. One was a reply from the Scottish Stop the War Coalition. They had a very successful meeting here earlier today. And Keith, our organiser, asked if William could address the meeting. But they still turned around and said they would not have a speaker from the 9/11 Truth Campaign. The reason why the offer of a speaker was not supported was because, one, we already had a large number of speakers for a one-day conference, and two, the issue of conspiracy theory is not the most pressing at this point in time. Now, I really do fail to see how to stop the war, who are trying to stop further wars, are not interested in trying to analyse the possible cause of those wars. It doesn't make sense. It's an intellectually bankrupt position. And I have to say, the 9/11 issue may have started out possibly as a fringe issue on the internet, and I'm sure most people in the Stop the War Coalition don't read the Daily Mail, but perhaps they should have done today. There's a 2-page spread laying out all the key information about why the official version of 9/11 is a crock of lies. So this is going mainstream, and it's going mainstream fast, and our movement is growing fast around the globe. We've got to use it to stop a possible invasion of Iran. We've got to use it to stop totalitarianism creeping into our country. So please, do get involved. Give your details to Keith. Just spread the word. As I said, do your own research, raise your awareness. This is too important not to do at this stage. We do not want to be the generation that gives away our democracy in our country, and our children have to live in a police state, and that is the way we are going. So use this as a weapon to stop that slide away from democracy.